Arahang Samma Sambuddho. 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 Sukhino wa khemino hondu. Sukhino wa khemino hondu. Sukhino wa khemino hondu. Sabba satta bhavantu sukhidatta. Well and secure may all beings be. Well and secure may all beings be. Well and secure may all beings be. May all beings be happy at heart. Sukhino wa khemino hondu. Sukhino wa khemino hondu. Sukhino wa khemino hondu. Sabba satta bhavantu sukhidatta. Well and secure may all beings be. Well and secure may all beings be. Well and secure may all beings be. May all beings be happy at heart. Sukhino wa khemino hondu. Sukhino wa khemino hondu. Sukhino wa khemino hondu. Sabba satta bhavantu sukhidatta. Well and secure may all beings be. Well and secure may all beings be. Well and secure may all beings be. May all beings be happy at heart. Okay, sit with your back straight. Compose yourself. Body relaxed. Mind relaxed. Open your awareness to what's happening around you right now with your senses. Even as you listen to the Dhamma talk, you can also be partially aware of the senses, particularly your body. Not only will this help to anchor your mind and make it more receptive to what is being said, but it will also give you a better sense of objectivity. Yesterday we talked about the 3 eyes to not I. The first I is information, the second is intelligence, and the third is insight. And I said that we need correct information before we can make use of our intelligence to put that information into practical use, to apply that information so that insight can arise. So insight is actually an effect of the first two eyes. Yesterday I talked about the three characteristics of constructed phenomena, conditioned phenomena, which are the arising, persisting and changing, and the passing away. And I also said that this is the inherent characteristic of all conditioned phenomena. When one has achieved a certain sort of composure and one observes conditioned phenomena, then one can interpret these three characteristics in three ways. One can interpret them as impermanent, changing all the time, arising and passing away. Or one can also get the impression that it's all suffering because it keeps on without stopping. No way you can stop it, all due to causes and conditions. It's like a endless flow of a river. Thirdly, one can also interpret it as not self, not me. There's no one in control. It's all due to causes and conditions. This is the information that I am sharing with you. In scientific terms, we could say that this is a hypothesis. Now you go to the laboratory, which is your own mind-body, and you try to verify that. Is that really true? And I said yesterday that in order to do that, one must have a certain degree of composure. I said that if one is an intellectual, then one could rationalize oneself to one's own mind and accept things based on intellectual faith. Everything will pass away anyway. Whatever arises is due to causes and conditions, even though you may not actually perceive the causes and conditions. But you already have this concept in your mind, and so whatever that arises, you are able to let go. It gives you a certain degree of acceptance. When you don't resist, and you are able to accept things when they occur, whether they are pleasant or unpleasant, whether they are according to your wishes or not, then that gives you composure. Then you can look at things objectively. When the mind is composed, then it looks at all these things again and again, at first only with intellectual understanding, rationalizing to the mind that everything is conditioned, it comes about because of cause and condition, although you don't really see it. So that's why you make use of intelligence to verify this fact in your personal practice. There are two very important elements that are required for intelligence to work. The first is Sati, or mindfulness, as it is usually translated. And the second is Sambhajanya, or full awareness. Sambhajanya has been translated in various ways. You can translate it as full awareness, clear comprehension, clear awareness, full understanding. I shall explain each of these in more detail. Before I do that, Let me backtrack a bit to talk about composure. Yesterday I talked about the 3 features of the 6 senses in terms of the 5-6-1 principle. Can you remember? When you understand the 5-6-1 principle, then you go on one more further step in order to still your mind of compulsive thinking, to extract your mind from compulsive thinking so that it can be still and composed. There are also some basic principles involved, and I've come up with another acronym. It's called Ada Anchor. Ada means God in Malay. The first A, A-D-A, anchor. The first A stands for attitude. You must have the correct attitude towards thoughts, perceptions, and feelings. The correct attitude is that they don't belong to you. They are the products of causes and conditions. They are the natural activity of the mind. Number 1. Correct attitude. The second is D. The D stands for don't. Don't push them away because they're natural activity. Don't ignore them. Like when you do pure samatha practice, you just focus on your breath and you ignore all your thoughts and any other distractions, you just completely ignore them. Don't do that. When we practice open awareness, we don't push things away, we don't ignore things, nor do we follow them. We don't follow the thoughts, we don't follow our perceptions, we don't follow the feelings. What do? We acknowledge them. Don't push them away, don't ignore them, don't follow them, but acknowledge them. When they are there, we know that they are there. Someone asked me, if a thought arises and I don't want to pursue the thought, and then I direct my attention to the 5 senses, is that pushing away? Is that pushing away? It isn't. Pushing away is, there is a resistance there and there is unpleasant feeling. You don't like it, you don't want it. You redirect your attention to the 5 senses, it's just a changing of the object. You do it without aversion. So Ada, don't push them away, don't ignore them, don't follow them. The A is to acknowledge them. And then anchor yourself in the 5 senses. So that is the basic principle of how to still your mind for open awareness. A lot of yogis have this preconceived idea that meditation means you must have no thoughts, you must be still and calm. Not necessarily so. There can be thoughts, but you can be still and calm. As long as you don't follow the thoughts and you don't push them away, you don't fight with the thoughts. You apply this Ada anchor principle in your practice, very soon the mind will be composed, even though there are many objects. For people who have done focused awareness before, switching to open awareness is very difficult because their mind is really used to the idea of staying with one object and ignoring everything else. More objects, more distractions. Less objects, better, more focused. When you transit from focused awareness to open awareness, very difficult, it's very unsettling. From one object, suddenly you are bombarded with objects from all the senses. And with your eyes open, even worse. A lot of chatter and comments whenever you see things. That can put you off. And you can't see any benefit at all in open awareness. How is that compared to the stillness and peace I get from focused awareness? There are many Thai forest teachers who confessed that they were stuck in this focused awareness for many years before they finally came out of it. It's very natural for the mind to be attached to pleasant things. It is out of the ordinary sensual pleasure, so much more refined than the pleasures you get from any of the senses. Very easy for the mind to be attached to it. What we encourage yogis to do, especially beginners, is to start off with open awareness. In open awareness, the most important thing is the right attitude. If you have the right attitude, it doesn't matter what happens. Even a restless mind is an interesting opportunity for you to understand how the mind works. You can see anicca so clearly. The mind is thinking of one thing and another, and it's not stopping. You can see dukkha, suffering. You don't want the mind to think so much, you want it to settle down, you want peace, and yet it's not listening to you. It's doing all these things one after another. You can see anatta because it's not following your instructions. It's not under your control. So why are you complaining? You can see the three characteristics so clearly. The only problem is your attitude, because you think that meditation must be stillness without thoughts. So having the wrong attitude can bring suffering. And I say that having a restless mind is more manageable and can be more insightful than having a drowsy mind. When you're drowsy, you can't watch anything. Everything is murky and you fall asleep. And it's very difficult to manage drowsy mind, even if you're an experienced meditator. Sometimes you just have to give in to the body and take a nap. Another common challenge that yogis have is boredom. This is for both sensual people and for intellectuals. When you practice open awareness, the object seems to be the same old thing. The same old birds, crickets, the frogs, once in a while the monkeys and the wind blowing, and then back to your senses in the body. You're going round and round and round. Same old thing, and the mind wants something different. Initially, when you come here, wow, it's so nice, I don't have any worries, don't think about all my work and all, but when you come here, it's so boring, you start to think about your work. You start to conjure out stories to give you some pleasure, intellectual stimulation. This is also a very good opportunity for you to explore boredom. Why is there boredom? Why are you bored? Ask yourself, what does the mind prefer to do other than what it's doing right now? Why can't the mind be content with the present moment? When boredom arises, ask yourself the question. And is boredom a pleasant state or is it an unpleasant state? Yeah, is it suffering or not? So explore. If it's suffering, what is the cause of suffering? That is the first noble truth and the second noble truth. If you have established a certain degree of composure and your thoughts become more and more spaced out in the sense that there are more gaps in between one thought and another, and your mind is more with the senses with less thoughts, that's the time when you can start to investigate. In order to investigate, you must have Sati Sampajanya. What is Sati Sampajanya? Mindfulness and full awareness. What is mindfulness? Mindfulness is the English translation of the Pali word Sati. And Sati means actually remembrance. When we talk about remembrance, this has some relation or connection with memory. In terms of our Buddhist terminology and in terms of my experience and understanding, we can look at memory in terms of spontaneous memory and intentional or volitional memory. Spontaneous memory is like when you see something and immediately the mind recognizes it. You hear a sound, immediately it recognizes, oh, that's a cricket sound, that's a monkey, that's a dog sound, that's a motorbike sound, that's somebody's footstep. That's spontaneous memory. Spontaneous memory does not involve any volition. But if somebody comes to this hall and then thinks about where he left his bottle of water because he forgot to bring it here, then he'll start to think, okay, where did I leave it? Where was the last time I held that bottle of water? And then you try to remember and recall where you actually held that bottle of water the last time. That is willful memory. That is volitional memory. And that is Sati. That is remembrance, what we now call mindfulness. When you remember something, it means that it's a past object, isn't it? But why do people equate mindfulness with present moment awareness? You can't remember the present. If you're in the present, you're in the present. If you remember something, it's of the past. There is contradiction of terms. In fact, if you look at the Asian translations of the word Sati, in Chinese, in Thai, in Burmese, and in Sri Lankan, they are all translated as remembrance. Mindfulness equals present moment awareness is a modern phenomena. It's a modern translation, translated by the Westerners. It was first translated as mindfulness by Rhys David, who is one of the pioneer translators of the Pali language. It has, through the ages, and now has become the vogue in the world. It's very, very popular. And most people understand mindfulness as present moment awareness. So how can we reconcile this apparent contradiction? So in my research, in my understanding, in my study of the scriptures, in my own experience and in my teaching yogis, I found that there are 4 aspects of Sati or mindfulness that can be very helpful in the support of intelligence, putting into practice the information that we have gathered. I call that the 4 R's. The first R is to remember. The second R is to recollect. The third R is to remind. And the fourth R is retrospect. Let me explain. Remember means when you listen to instructions given by your teacher, or when you read instructions in a book, at that moment you have to make a willful effort to remember what you heard, what you read. If you don't, once you get up from your seat, you will not be able to recollect that. That's the first R. Remember while you are listening, while you are reading instructions. The second R is to recollect. If you remember while you are listening or reading the instructions, then when you get up from that seat, even though you don't turn on the record, no, the MP3 player, you don't look at the book or your notes, you can recollect what was said. You can recollect the instructions. This is also Sati. This is also mindfulness. The third aspect of mindfulness is not only do you recollect the theory, but you remind yourself to put it into practice. This is the third R. And the fourth R is what makes people say that mindfulness equals present moment awareness. Retrospect. Retrospect literally means look back. Retro is back, spect is look. What do you look back? look back at what had just happened. When the ear hears something, but the mind looks back at what the ear had heard. You see something and the mind looks back at what the eye has seen. Our five senses can only take in raw data. They don't interpret. Eye only sees color, ear only hears sound, the nose only smells, tongue only tastes, the body only feels sensation. It is the mind that interprets. That color makes up a form, and that form is a man or a woman or a dog or a monkey. That's the work of the mind. The first impression comes through the sense door. That is in the present. But the mind takes a past object. That is the immediate past. Even more obvious are your thoughts and your emotions and your feelings. They arise first. You're angry first, and then you realize or you're aware that you're angry. A thought arose and you realize that you're thinking. That's even more obvious. It's the immediate past. In conventional terms, we say that's the present. But actually it's the immediate past. That's why the Buddha was very specific. He used the word Sati. Sati is to look back at the immediate past. Sati is used not only in that fourth context of looking at the immediate past, because in other places the Buddha also defines Sati or mindfulness as the ability to remember things that were said long time ago. And he also said that if you remember the teachings that you heard in a Dhamma talk, that is also Sati, remembrance. So nowadays, people use the word mindfulness mostly in the fourth context of looking back at the immediate past. And we say present moment awareness. How is mindfulness related to awareness? The word mindfulness has a semblance of remembrance. If you look in the English dictionary, the word mindfulness was used a long time ago, meaning doing something carefully based on your past memory. You are mindful of doing something because you remember something that you're supposed to do. That is the meaning of mindfulness. The word mindfulness itself originally is a memory of the past. It's only nowadays that people use it in the present moment awareness. The word awareness is also a very loose word in English. You can say there's public awareness, there's public consciousness. There's no public consciousness for conservation of water or conservation of the natural environment. You can also say that there's no public awareness for the need for conservation. So the word consciousness and awareness is used very loosely in English, and they can even be interchangeable. We can even say that mindfulness or sati is awareness. It is awareness of a past object, whether the past is an immediate past, intermediate past, or distant past. For example, when a person is able to recollect his past lives, many hundreds or thousands of lifetimes ago, they also use the word sati, remembering the past life. When you practice contemplation of death, marana sati, the word sati is also there, remembering death. When we do Buddhanusati, the word sati is also there. We remember qualities of the Buddha. Buddhanusati, Dhammanusati, Sanghanusati, these are all remembering the virtues of the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. So the word awareness is so broad, it can be used in so many contexts. So I purposely use the word awareness for Sampajanya, to differentiate it from mindfulness. When you say full awareness, it means that you're fully aware of what is happening. Fully aware could be aware in many modes. For example, you're fully aware of how a conditioned phenomena has occurred, which means you understand that it has arisen and then persist and pass away. You understand, you are fully aware that it has arisen due to causes and conditions, and it has passed away due to causes and conditions. That's called full awareness, or clear comprehension. It's a sort of wisdom, it's a sort of understanding. But full awareness cannot occur without mindfulness, because mindfulness function is to bring a past object to the mind's attention. And that's all. Mindfulness does not have wisdom. Where does wisdom come from? Before we go to that, let me explain the nature of the mind. The nature or the composition of the mind can be likened to a corporation, a company, a society. A company or a corporation has got various departments. You have the board of directors, you have the executive managers, and then you have the finance department, you have the HR department, you have the sales department, you have the PR department, and so forth. Different departments have their own duties. It's the same. The mind has got different departments to do their own duties. So Sati or mindfulness is one department, and its job is just to bring a past object to the mind's attention. That's all it does. Finish. Then full awareness takes over. When that past object has come to the mind's attention, the next department, full awareness, will look at it to fully understand it. But full awareness also depends on Sati, because its understanding is influenced by past memory. Sati is the one that has already gathered all the information. All the information that I've been sharing with you today. If you don't have Sati, you don't have remembrance, you can't remember them, how are you going to put that into practice? So Sati is very important because you need to remember instructions, you need to recollect them, you need to remind yourself, and you need to look back. When you look back at what has happened, then the full awareness will try to understand it, will investigate to see its true nature and causes and conditions. I also like to see full awareness as a range. When you are practicing open awareness, you are just barely aware of phenomena, because that is the first stage where you try to compose the mind. You don't want to involve the mind in too much mental activity, so you don't try to investigate. You just keep on asking yourself, if the mind is not caught up in thoughts, what is it aware of? So you might be aware of seeing, hearing, physical sensations. A thought might arise, you know it, you don't push it away, you let it go, come back again to your senses. That is just bare awareness. You don't try to investigate. After some time, your thoughts will become less and less. A gap in between thoughts will become longer. Your mind is more composed. At that time, then you can apply full awareness. You can start to investigate. You can start to ask yourself questions. How did this thought arise? Because now the thoughts are more far apart. Then you can afford to ask, how did this thought arise? Particularly, a thought that keeps on arising because you have some unresolved issues and it keeps on bugging you. So for such thoughts, you just ask the question, why is this thought bothering me? Why is it coming up again and again? You ask, but you don't try to reason out. You just ask and you come back to your senses. Because it is a persistent thought, it will come again and again, so you won't miss it. Don't worry. Every time it comes up, you ask the question, but don't go and think about it. Come back to do your open awareness. When the causes and conditions are right, then one day wisdom will arise. You can see the answer. But if you are already quite an accomplished yogi, and you are practicing open awareness in your daily life for a long time, your mind is composed most of the time. And whatever issue that arises, you can immediately get the answer. You can see all the causes and conditions that led to this issue. you can solve it very, very objectively and clearly. That is the advantage of practicing open awareness. Open awareness is something that you can bring back and practice in your daily life. You don't have to shut yourself in an aircon room and sit quietly for 1 hour to focus on any particular object. If you train yourself, there's a lot of time that you have throughout the day where you don't need to do productive thinking. For example, how many hours is it between the time you get up from your bed and the time you sit in your desk in the office to start your work? Yeah, a couple of hours there, right? 2-3 hours. In those 2-3 hours, you don't have to do very much thinking. But most people get lost in thoughts about the past, about the future, random thoughts, useless commentary and chatter. If you can make full use of your time, when you don't need to do urgent, productive thinking, stay with the present moment. Be aware of what you're doing, what the senses are perceiving at the moment. So if you create a habit out of that, then the mind will automatically be composed all the time. How do we investigate? In the scriptures, there are descriptions of what full awareness entails. If you are familiar with the Satipatthana Sutta, you will know that there's one section where it is said the monk acts in full awareness when he is walking forward or when he turns back and walk, when he's looking forward, when he's looking to the back, when he's stretching his arms, when he's bending his arms, when he is wearing his robe, holding his bowl, when he's eating, when he's chewing, when he's tasting, when he's drinking, when he's defecating, when he's urinating, when he's standing, walking, sitting, lying down, when he speaks, and when he's silent. So it seems that these things are all supposed to be done with full awareness. What does that really mean? Does it mean that you have to be fully aware of all your physical movements? There's another sutta in the Samyutta Nikaya. It's also called Sati Sutta. There are two Satipatthana Samyutta, both also called Sati Sutta. So one Sati Sutta talks about this full awareness in terms of these physical activities. And it says, how does one practice full awareness? Then it says, okay, here a monk acts with full awareness when he's doing all these things. And then in the next sutta, he asks, how does one live with full awareness? And then here he says, the monk is aware or knows when feelings arise in him. He knows when feelings persist and he knows when feelings go away. He knows when thoughts arise, he knows when thoughts persist, he knows when thoughts go away. He knows when perceptions arise, persist and go away. So that's called fully aware. You're fully aware when your thoughts, feelings and perceptions arise, persist and go away. This is also related to your physical activities. Before any physical activity, there's always a thought, isn't it? There's an intention. Your physical activity could be motivated by a perception, a thought, or a feeling. Not just being aware of physical movements, it's being aware of the thoughts, the feelings, and the perceptions that precede and follow your bodily movements. In some meditative traditions, we emphasize on following your body movements. But that's only part of it. That's not the whole picture. Not only are you fully aware of your bodily movements, even more importantly, you are supposed to be aware of what precedes that. The thoughts, the feelings, and the perceptions preceding those actions as well as following them. While you are doing all these actions, your thoughts, feelings and perception will change. And that will again influence your next step, your next action. So it's a continual process of body and mind, not just body. Trying to be with the body, with the senses, is only a means to an end. It's not the end yet. Don't think that that's finished. Your job is not finished. It's just to make you composed. Then you have to look into your mind to see the thoughts, feelings and perceptions. The suttas do not give a very thorough explanation or breakdown of what full awareness really entails. Although it gives you all these things, fully aware of thoughts, feelings and perceptions as they arise, persist and go away, acting with full awareness while you're doing all these bodily and physical activities. But how? It lists the things that you should be act with awareness, but how do you do it? The commentaries come out with 4 aspects of how you can apply full awareness. The first one is, I have made an acronym and I call it the BARR test. B-A-R-R. Like I said earlier, full awareness works in conjunction with mindfulness, because mindfulness brings what had just happened to the mind's attention. So what happens is, mindfulness brings that thought, that perception, that feeling that has just arisen to full awareness attention. Then full awareness will process it. How does it process it? In 4 ways. First, it will process it by asking whether it's beneficial or purposeful or not. Then if it passes the test, it's beneficial, then it goes on to the next one. Is it appropriate? And if it's appropriate, then it goes on to the next one. Is it relevant? If it's relevant, finally, is it realistic? Only when it passes all the 4 tests, then only you carry it out. If not, forget it. If it's a thought, or a perception, or a feeling that has arisen, the mind, Sati or mindfulness, has to catch it, so that full awareness can process it. Full awareness will investigate to see whether it's beneficial, appropriate, relevant, or realistic. If it's not, don't pursue the thought. Forget it. If it doesn't pass the first test, that's the end of the story. No need to go on to the next one. The commentaries give few examples for that. All these are, of course, in relation to meditation practice. It says that there is a festival going on. Like for example, there's a pagoda festival. A lot of monks will be invited there to do all-night chanting and all that. It's supposed to be a wholesome activity. That's why people go there to do merits. If a thought arises and a monk wants to go there, wants to go and listen to the whole night chanting or participate, then he has to, first of all, process that thought. Is it beneficial? Beneficial in relation to your practice. If you go there, so many people, will there be distracting or not? And then when you come back, you'll be flooded with a lot of playback memories of all the things that you heard and saw. If it doesn't pass the test, don't go. It's wholesome, but it's not beneficial. That's one. Okay, the next one is, if it's relevant. Give you an example. Something which is beneficial but not relevant. For example, you all know that reading Dhamma books is beneficial. Having Dhamma discussions is beneficial, isn't it? But in a retreat situation like this, it's beneficial, but is it relevant? It's not relevant to you because, as I said, retreat rules are don't read. Read your own mind. Cut down on conversations. If you discuss with the teacher, not with your friends. So this is not relevant. Doesn't pass, forget it. Don't discuss, don't read books. Now another way the commentaries interpret relevance is that whether it will disrupt your practice and whether your practice can be continuous. continuity of practice. And he gives this example of monks going out for alms round. This monk is a serious meditator. He gets up early in the morning and he does his meditation, and he was very mindful as he prepares his bowl, put on his robes, and walks to the village to collect his alms. All the way, very mindful, walking. When he gets to the village, then he meets with his supporters, and the supporters start to chat with him, and he chats with them. Then they invite him to the house, and he gives a Dharma talk, and does some counseling, and he comes back, his mind is full of all this playback. So he says he failed that test. That is not relevant in the sense that that does not conduce to continuity of practice. Continuity of practice is also a criteria for deciding whether you should follow that thought or intention. Then the last one is whether it's realistic. Realistic here in the ultimate sense means whether it accords with the three characteristics that we talked about. Are you looking at phenomena in terms of arising, passing away, and due to cause and condition? For example, you sit here with the eyes open and look at the trees and the birds, and then you start to make a story out of it. Oh, the bird is here, is running here, over there, it's flying here to there, and there's one bird over here calling out to the other bird. I wonder they are lovers or husband and wife or something like that. Start to make a story out of it. That's not realistic in the sense that you are supposed to look at how the mind works. The mind is distracted because of a movement. And that movement is actually the eye seeing something moving, but the mind saw it, and the mind recognized a bird, and the mind started to make a story. So you are supposed to see all these things as not me, not mine, not myself. It's just a thought that has arisen because of cause and condition. You're not to make a story out of it. I see some of you, when you were reporting, you're talking about monkeys. When you're looking up in the forest, also you see suddenly the tree has become a mask or become a face, or become a Buddha image. Not to get caught up in all those things, but to see how the mind works, how the mind creates perceptions from these things which are just colors. Actually, it's just colors, but the mind, due to past perceptions, created something out of it. You want to see how the mind works in terms of ultimate reality. That is all due to cause and conditioning, not me, not mine. Not to go inside and become part of the story, or not to make a story itself. In terms of practice in the retreat situation, that is what is meant by full awareness. Full awareness has got 4 aspects. Remember, the BARR test. So whenever any thought, intention arises in you, mindfulness has to catch it in time before you follow the intention. Then full awareness has to process it. Is it beneficial? No, forget it. Come back to your senses. Is it beneficial and inappropriate? Is it relevant? No. Will it conduce to continuity of practice? No, forget it. And then, is it realistic? Is it according to the 3 characteristics? Can you see cause and conditioning? No, forget it. You have to make use of your intelligence to be able to practice well. You can think. It's not that you cannot think totally. The first 2, when you look back and process your thoughts, feelings and perceptions, you need to have a value system to decide whether it's beneficial or whether it's appropriate. This requires some thinking. It's not to say that in meditation you must cut off all thoughts. There has to be beneficial thoughts. There can be beneficial thoughts that are related to how to practice well, using your intelligence to put these information that you have remembered and recollected into practice. We talked about information, and now it's intelligence. We're making use of intelligence to put that information and apply in your practice. When you do that again and again and again, then when all the causes and conditions are right, wisdom will arise. The last I is insight. Insight is something which you do not intellectually think about. It arises like a eureka. Suddenly you realize it, not necessarily in words. Usually it is a wordless understanding. If you are still figuring it out in terms of verbal connection of things, cause and conditioning, singing in words, that is still on the intellectual side. Not that it's not useful, that is still useful. It is part of the process of getting the real insight. But it's not the real insight yet. But don't indulge in that too much. Try to come back to the present moment. All this information that I'm talking to you about right now is actually sinking into your subconscious mind. You may not take notes, you may not be recording what I'm saying, but your subconscious mind is recording everything inside there. When you meditate, when you practice, your mind will be influenced by this conditioning. You may ask, you ask me to be mindful. Who is mindful? Who is watching? There's no one watching. There's no one mindful. It's all due to cause and conditioning. Because of this conditioning of this Dhamma talk, it will condition your mind to look at things in a certain way. You look at things in a certain way, but as I said, it's more of a verification process. You want to verify what you heard. Is that really true? Can I really see that? Not through rational thinking, but through actual personal experience. That's the job of the yogi. As I said, open awareness is very, very useful. It can be used not only in a retreat situation, when you go back home also. Try to come back to the present moment and think only when it is necessary. Because most of the time, we are lost in unproductive thinking. Idle thoughts, idle chatter and commentary going on in your mind. If you're watching your mind well enough within the retreat, you will know how much commentary and chatter is going on. I think I've spoken enough, maybe overload of information. Any questions before we retire? Where does Sati Sampajanya reside in the mind? Nothing resides in the mind. The mind is changing all the time due to causes and conditions.
There are four aggregates.
Talking about the four aggregates of the mind, where does Sati Sampajanya fit in? There are five aggregates altogether. The first one is rupa or form. The second is feeling. The third is perception. The fourth is volitional formations. And the fifth is consciousness. The second, which is Vedana or feeling, is not volitional in nature. There's only one thing that is volitional, and that is volitional formation. The rest, feeling, perception and consciousness, are resultants. You got no choice. They happen because of causes and conditions. They are effects. Volition is something, a will, a volition, a choice that is made. And this is also a product of cause and conditioning. Everything is a product of cause and conditioning, but this one is special. There's a choice there. But that choice is also conditioned by the past and the present. Where does Sati Sampajanya come in? They all come under Sankhara. In terms of the four aggregates, feeling, perception and consciousness are all resultants. Everything else goes under volitional formation. Very simple. Okay, I think that's enough for tonight.